back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, and the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. And please do go there if you're interested in becoming a medical intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. It's where you can go to become trained and qualified to work in this area professionally. Also, you can go there and download our free 50-page Jumpstart Your Intuition Guide. It's free. It's online. All you have to do is go to the site. It's that easy. Do sign up for our newsletter. Check us out on YouTube. Become a subscriber. Blah, 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 blah. The usual stuff. I'm moving along. So in this hour, we're going to be talking to Keith Blanchard about stuff. I'm just going to say about stuff. And I've known Keith for a number of years now. He lives in Memphis. I have to think about that in a minute. Memphis is a really great guy, has written a couple of books, has a video. One of his books is The Divine Principle, and his movie, and I always say this wrong, so I'm sure he'll correct me after, about do what you love or love what you do. I don't know. I always get it backwards. But anyway, he always corrects me, so it's all good. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, without any further ado, Keith Anthony Blanchard. His website is keithanthonyblanchard.com. Hey, Keith.
Hi. You said it right the first time.
I did?
Do what you love.
Well, anyway, we're just going to move along. I told you it's just been that kind of a day for me. So, but where I wanted to start with you, one of the things that you talk about, and I think it's in the Divine Principle, is at one point in your life, you were visited by a spirit guide, and it really kind of changed your life. And so I was very curious to know, because it's changed your life. You started working with a lot of people, blah, blah, blah. What was that experience like? I think there are a lot of people that want to meet their spirit guides or interact with their spirit guides and really don't know what that is, how to accomplish it, etc. And I'm just curious what that experience was like for you.
Well, in short, I was going through a dark night of the soul for quite a while. And I was at a place where I had to plop myself down on my knees and surrender my ideas, surrender my want to control the scenario that I was coming out of. It was a bad relationship. Long story short, in that place of humility on my metaphorical knee, I found a space from my heart that was absolutely sincere and passionate. The sincerity that I had in my asking God to visit me was truly aligned. I knew that I should repeat the prayer, and the prayer was, I need to hear your voice at this time in my life. And there was no BS about it. There was no joke about it. It was a true heartfelt asking. But the passion I had, the want, the taste in my mouth to want that morsel, that nectar, it was tangible, it was palpable. It was very, very real for me. But I knew I just had to keep asking the prayer throughout my day until I felt intuitively that I was heard, so to speak, or it would be complete, let's say that rather. And I said this for about 3 weeks, just under a month. And one night after playing music, I was dog tired playing from out of town and drove back to Memphis the very night. I was awakened out of my sleep about 6 a.m. by a voice that said, "Good morning, Keith. It's time for you to wake up." And I assumed my wife at the time, excuse me, was waking me up. And I look around the room and there's no one there. So I immediately thought it was my friend Scott, who I didn't hear him knock and was coming over and let himself in. There was nobody there, just no one. And I just dismissed the voice that I heard from within as just a dream voice of shifting realities, whatever. I heard somebody say something, a deceased relative, or whatever it may have been. And I laid back on the bed with the intentions of going back to sleep. And the voice said, "Good morning, Keith. I asked you to wake up." In this experience was everything. It shattered everything I knew. I knew this experience was supposed to happen before I was born, but didn't remember that was to be so until it happened. I knew it was always supposed to after that moment. The voice said, "Good morning, Keith. It's time for you to wake up." And I was thrown into the light. You talked about guides. I was in contact with guides for quite a while. This was something deeper. You asked me, how did it feel? How was it? It was expansive. It was life-changing. It was me at my largest level. Some people would call that God, higher self, whatever you deem it. It doesn't matter to me. I just knew that it was everything that I knew and beyond that. And that was the divine principle. The stuff that I didn't know that was contained in this idea that was imparted to me by this higher conscious being was the 8 years that I would sit down and write the divine principle.
Well, that's pretty powerful. Prior to, I mean, you kind of mentioned this. So prior to having this experience, would you have considered yourself an intuitive individual in the first place?
I'm sorry, I lost you for a quick moment in the back half of that question.
Prior to this happening, would you have considered yourself an intuitive individual in the first place?
I was working on developing that muscle. Obviously, I was in metaphysics early at about that time. And I knew that I always had a sense of intuition, but I was actually focusing on intuition at this part of my life, trying to develop it, meditating every day, being as, quote, spiritual as I can be, what I thought spiritual was. And so, yes, that muscle was starting to expand. But when I sat down every day, give or take, for 8 years from 12 noon to 6 at night, sometimes 9 at night, only to get up to use the restroom, get something to eat, I would sit there 6 to 9 hours a day in meditation and just absolute quiet listening. And I would impart questions that I felt from my heart. Humanity elected me as the mouthpiece to ask. That was the space I was coming from inside as I was beseeching these questions from the universe. I would say, why? Why does this happen? I mean, I get it. We created all. I get it. But why and how and what? Asking heartfelt, serious, passionate questions. And when you do that for, 7.5, 8 years, it will bust you wide open to where, you begin to be visited by loved ones, guides, extraterrestrials, celestials, and they all want to talk. They're all waiting in a line in a phone booth, and they're waiting to talk to you. It comes to a point to where you have to say, okay, enough. If you all have something to say it through one voice. But unless I ask you to be present, kind of lay back a little bit.
But I would think being a musician, because you're a musician, that, playing music and being in the flow of the music would also give you a similar energy space to what you're experiencing through your meditation.
Yes, I've always known that, but in explaining what I did to you a moment ago, I kind of overlooked that fact, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Yes, it's very much the same thing. It's a different pathway to the grocery store. It's the same thing. It's me tapping into my creative self, or in the spiritual thing that I did, tapping into the creator. It's the same energy, but they feel the same, but yet very, very different. The experience I had when I was being consumed by light energy, and I knew the molecules in the wall, why they were there, where they were going next. It was me. It was my hair. I heard the voice. I smelled the voice. I tasted the voice. I felt the voice. It was everything. But in a musical way, it's like it's more from the effect that I'm a channel. I'm a conduit for this expression to come through. And we've had this in conversation before, you and I, Dr. Rita, was that when I get into the, quote, zone with my bandmates, and I am fortunate to play with some serious badass musicians, people who are truly no joke about what they do. These are truly masters of their craft. And when we all, 4 or 5 songs into it, as we kind of fall in and hunker down and really get in there and we start digging into ourselves and trying to pull out this creative God fire, if you would. One, not only because in doing so, it's going to get me off and give me a charge, and everybody else in the band, which is 4 other guys, and we start connecting and gelling to where there is truly a divine conversation happening. Because the level of musicians that I'm able to play with, without rehearsal, we do some things that there is no explanation other than there is one conscious being that is using us 4 musicians like fingers on a hand. It's a beautiful place. It's a very, very beautiful, powerful place, because not only are you being lifted and charged by your creative God energy, but the people who are sitting in that audience, when you are on, it is life-changing. It is very, very profound to go see any professional band who is really, really in touch with their God self. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and being in that place, they're very similar, but there's a different tone. There's a different texture to the divine energy. They're like on different sides of the spectrum of the same pie, I guess you can say.
But I think it's just interesting and relevant as far as how much time you spend in that connection. You know, because there are some people that spend 0 time in that connection.
Yeah, and I think it's a want, a passion. You have to want it. You know, we talk about as spirituals that we shouldn't want. No, this is an exception to the rule. You have to want it. It has to be your breath. It has to be your pinpointed focus. It has to be your desire, your wish. It has to be you. And when you have that when you can muster up that kind of oomph, that kind of fire, that kind of calling within you, things begin to happen in a very serious way in a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. But it's all about what size bite do you want to take of this divine pie.
Divine pie. So when you're talking about the one guy that did come to you that morning, did you feel that it was a guy that was like at a different level, or did you think that it was a different entity? I mean, because you said that you were kind of communicating with your guides prior to that, you know, so how would you kind of compare and contrast the 2 experiences? I mean, because it was obviously a very different experience.
Good question. Really good question. I did a poor attempt to answer that part of your question a little earlier, but I heard you clearly this time.
Well, guides, I wasn't really asking that question before. Now I am. So
guides to me really sound to me like whispers in my ear. Though I may not hear them in an auditory way, they still have the quality of being whispers in my ear. Also, impressions and a few little glimpses here or there. The experience I had in June of 1996, coming out of a night's sleep, was completely different. It was like a conflagration within inside of me. It was like the Big Bang. It was like an explosion, and I'm not trying to dress it up with bells and whistles, making it sound like I had this huge God Moses experience. This is not what I'm conveying whatsoever. I don't know how to describe such expansiveness. It's like there are no words that could truly define the grandness of it. It just pales in comparison.
But I mean, but that is the experience. You know, I talk about the psychic experience, and it's like, but that is the experience. Yeah, you know, in listening to you talk, you know, I feel like, you know, and I'm going to say it in a kind of technical way, you know, that you were having a very direct 7th chakra connection with Source. Yes. Versus having your guides talk to you, which is more blah, 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 blah. I want to say external, but not.
And somewhat linearly too, as far as the guides. This was, and I'm glad you brought that up, because in this experience, in the experience that was being had, while it was being had, it didn't speak linearly, like you mentioned. Guides may do blah 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 blah. This was more of one impression that probably lasted a nanosecond. I mean, truly less than a second. I can't explain that part of it because I was not on the side of my bed looking at myself and seeing how long this was lasting. All I know is when I was in this experience, I was just impregnated. It was just an impregnation of divine information or wisdom or just whatever it was. And from that day forth, I began to feel bloated, truly bloated, as if I overate. And I realized that this was information that I would sit and log into a tape recorder for a year that created the raw or the original manuscript called The Divine Principle. But they were truly, truly different experience. In that one impression, Dr. Rita, everything it wanted, quote, from me, if there is such a thing, was given to me in that nanosecond. And it was done. But to me, in my linear mind, I had to process it in a linear fashion.
Well, yeah, because they just download, boom, here it is. Here's the box. Now empty it out and figure it out yourself.
Right.
But you hear people talk about having those kinds of experiences, or they have an opening, that occurs, like people that have near-death experiences. Obviously, that you didn't have a near-death experience, I don't think. But they have that experience, and when they're in the near-death experience, it's like the whole world opens up to them because they're not being limited anymore. And then they come back into the body, and they're like grasping, like they know that they know, but they can't remember what they know.
Yeah, and maybe in the future they would start to get glimpses in memory recall. When that, how do you describe the undescribable? Think about it. If I was to tell you, which I have, and many people have, if you go to I think it's in one of the astral planes, there's a place that exists that contains colors that we are not aware of. I went to that place, but how do I begin to describe you a color that's not blue, red, green, or yellow, orange? I mean, I don't have the words in my toolkit to convey that. I just don't. So when you asked me earlier, we talked about how did it feel? It was blissful, all-knowing at once, but how did it feel? How do you describe something that was truly void of everything, but yet it was everything? It's just awkward, somewhat to try. And it almost seems blasphemous. Right. Okay, Keith, that's enough of that. Get off of that one there.
Because let me frame a question in a slightly different way.
Sure.
I mean, would you consider that when you had that experience separate from your experience with your guides, that it was more of a communication with God, your higher self, that kind of a communication versus actually a spirit guide communication?
Yeah,
and let me just frame it in a different way. So I went through a period of about 3 years where I was basically channeling God stuff all the time.
Right.
And I was it was really funny because I was taking these Kabbalah classes, and the instructor, this Hasidic Jew, was talking about, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm writing feverishly through these classes, just taking notes. And the person sitting next to me thought I was taking notes about what the teacher was saying, but I wasn't. I was taking notes because he would say something, and then I would get this total download of crystal clarity of this is what they really mean. It's like, okay. And I'm just like writing down. I mean, it sounds like almost a kind of similar experience.
Yes. It was direct contact. I was hit with a lightning rod.
Ow.
In a good way. I mean, I was the quote ground, and it penetrated me, and I really dug it, and I was quiet for a while, for a day or two, and I felt I should be. I thought I should be reverent, humble, treat it as something special and sacred, which I did. There's no way you could not, because you wouldn't be open to have the visit if you didn't know how to handle it with appreciation and respect. But after 2 or 3 days, I had to tell somebody, and I did.
Well, hopefully the person that you told could hear it and not look at you like you were just some weirdo, need to be locked up kind of person.
No such luck. I live in the Bible Belt. Nothing against the Bible Belt. It's just a statement of fact. And he knew I was kind of out there and dabbled. No, that's not a good word. Looking at some other things. And then when I said, I have to tell you this, dude. And when I told him, he listened intentfully. He did. But I can see his arms fold, and he itched and this and that. And I can just imagine when he walked away, he goes, I love Keith. Keith is a good dude. He's a great friend of mine. But he's out there. I can feel the he's out there energy. Or in there, rather.
He's losing it. He's losing it.
Yeah, that was my hope the whole time, was just to lose it. And I think that's the reason I was successful in my cry, in my call to God to talk with me, comfort me, console me, is because I was willing to lose it. It was a total surrender that I believe truly brought it about.
And actually, there was a question, a long time ago that I didn't read. Not that one. And this was from Bill in New York, and this was quite a while ago, which I'm sure you read it, but I'm just going to read it on air now because it really does fit into where we're at now.
Dr. Rita, I want to say this real quick. I'm having this interview with you, and I'm trying to be in this chat room, and you're right. It's truly, truly tough to multitask for me in this way.
Well, then I have your brain tonight, okay? Not the chat room.
Yes, you got it. Okay.
I don't even hardly type in the chat room. Come on, because but the question was, Keith, is it a metaphysical connection with the spiritual guide, and what self-healing processes did you benefit from this experience? And I guess that's my question, which is why I came back to this. Did you experience self-healing from the experience, or some kind of healing from the experience?
Is the question pointed at physical healing or just healing in general?
Let's just go with healing in general. I mean, if there was something physically broken, I mean, you could throw that in too.
I became a new person. I was transformed. I was truly transformed. That much meditation, that much seeking, that much yearning for something greater than the capacity I knew as myself was revealed to me, and it was given to me, and it became my friend. And it's still healing. My life is dedicated to helping people. When before, my life as a rock musician trying to get a record deal was about myself. Everything I do, all my creative works, The Divine Principle, Eden Sky Wonders Why, my children's book series, the movie Do What You Love, is all geared towards helping people. And what I really, quote, pride myself on, I'm the guy next door. I'll walk off a stage if I see you in the audience for the first time seeing our band. 5 minutes, I'm eating French fries out of your basket. And I feel that comfortable that I've made such a connection with these people that they were going to ask me anyway. It's just an example of how it's changed my life. And, I tell people all the time, I expect to make a living doing what I do, living my dream, my passion. And I am doing that. I don't have a job. I hear people all the time say, Keith, I want to be a musician, but I can't do that. So you're talking to the wrong cat. But helping people is my gig. So to answer that question, yeah, it's healed me.
So we had a kind of a follow-up question from Plant in the chat room, when you were transformed, what changed most about you?
Compassion, peace, love. It taught me that. It healed me by defining what love is for me. Because before, as I said, it was about me. And then it changed to, it is still about me, but through me. It was my definition of what I saw love was versus this is what you have to give me to show me that you love me. It turned me, it put me in the opposite end of the pole. I began to see that people are really important. I had a sister, young age, died of a Friedreich's ataxia, a muscular dystrophy type disease, but of the nervous system. And she was my greatest teacher of compassion. She came to this planet selflessly to show me what it's like truly to care. And I don't mean just care for the sake of caring. I'm talking about really, really, truly caring for another human being.
Anything else change?
My lifestyle, the things that I want, the things that I don't. Everything has just changed. I don't know how to answer that other than that. Everything has just changed completely. I was, inverted. I was pulled inside out, and my interior became my exterior, meaning I now live that life exemplary. I love changing people. Dr. Rita, when I'm in public sometimes, I may have mentioned this in an interview with you before. Someone I just met. I will shake their hand in a certain way, guy, girl, admire something about this person that I'm speaking with, just met. Be it physical beauty, guy or girl, a nice piece of jewelry, or the conversation we're having. And when I find that one thing, I begin to massage it. I begin to admire it in such a way that I see people change right in front of my face. The conversation goes deeper. It feels like I am locked with their guides because I've opened them up with a word, a gesture, a look, a touch. That's how it's changed me. That's how it's healed me.
But that's pretty cool. So if you were to characterize yourself prior to this situation, what word would you give yourself?
Ask me that again differently, please. It's like I'm channeling right now, and it's hard for me to stay focused on you because I'm hearing you speak, and it's not involving words. So would you ask me that question again?
Oh, so you're having like a secondary conversation. See, usually when I have those secondary conversations, I'm laughing because they're always very funny. And
it's like I'm shifting, and it's like it's like I'm shifting. Something's being pulled out from under me. It's hard for me to stay present with you. So please ask me your question again.
Okay. I was just curious, you said that everything changed, and you're living a life of compassion. But if you were to if I were to have met you prior to 96, 99?
Yeah.
How would I characterize you? What would would I think that you were arrogant, or would I think that you were self-serving, or because it seems like you have a kind of, I don't want to say derogatory, but you just have a very different attitude toward who you are now. And I'm just curious who you were prior that you're no longer.
Well, I think about that time, people would describe me as a cool little guy. I have the curse, and they call me sweetie. Keith is like a brother to me when it comes to girls, or it has been in the past. But I lost a lot of anger. Jealousies, insecurities, fears. These are the things I left behind. And now my life is in such a way that when I'm confronted by something that frightens me, I walk directly into it. And of course, that will dissipate the situation because, if you can liken all your fears to a tree that you have in your backyard, an old, dead, rotten tree, And yeah, sure, you can pull out, a small saw and cut every branch. And eventually, you'll finish the job. Or you can pull out a big old chainsaw and just whack it. And I'm the chainsaw guy. I walk right into it. And it feels very funky. It feels very, very icky. But you eventually okay your way through it. That's what's changed in me.
And there are a lot of people that fear scares the crap out of them. And they won't address the fear. They will look at it and say, well, I'm afraid, and turn around and walk away, or go back, or ignore it, or pray that it would, it disappeared.
It doesn't happen. It belongs to that person. You can't shake it, because in your fear, listen to this. This is juicy. In your fear is the wisdom. That's where the wisdom's at. See, the universe has a very big sense of humor. It's waiting for us to get it. That's where our liberation is in the fear. Someone once told me, you want to find God? You want to take the path back to God? Don't take the path of light. Take the path of the dark. Because you got to clear all the crap out the way before you can ever get there. Because the things that you're already illumined about, you're already illumined about. There's no further work to be done. You have to chisel your way back home.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I like about hitting fear is it always lights up all of your resistance. And if there's resistance, you're not flowing. And if you're not flowing, you're not living. And so by addressing the fear, it lets you break through whatever that resistance is, if you choose to address it and move through it. Because usually it's not even that scary.
Your root fear is the first filter that blocks the soul's light. Excuse me.
Say that again?
Yes. I ate some popcorn earlier, so it's having a karmic effect on me. Excuse me.
No, I think Spirit just wants you to keep that one inside. But go ahead.
Yeah, right. Your root fear, excuse me for that. Your root fear is the first filter that blocks the soul's light. And every fear after that begins to thicken the wall.
I like that. But I think it's a true statement. Did you make that up?
Yes, in this moment.
Okay. Oh, you should write that one down, because that was a good one.
I'll just listen back to the interview. And
okay.
I bet there's a lot of little tidbits in here that you and I created. So wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because you just see it all the time. I mean, well, I see it all the time. I mean, because of my counseling work, just how many people, they're in jobs they don't like, they're in relationships they don't like. You look at the dynamic of what's going on. It's like, why are you there? There's not anything that is helpful, fulfilling. You're not living your life purpose. If there are young children involved, it's like the children aren't being benefited by the relationship not shifting or whatever. And it comes down to them going into fear. And it's like, okay, so you can just be there, be miserable, or you can just address it and move forward.
See, people think that being afraid will help them in a crisis. They think it protects them in a crisis. The guard, the wall, the guard, I have a wall, and the wall, I can hide behind it. It's going to protect me from whatever it is I am facing right now that is triggering within me my own fear. But that's the illusion. The moment you are afraid, that is the reality. In fact, it throws you directly into its path. Directly into its path.
And so, don't get out of the way.
You put it, fear, we were talking about fear, how it's in the way of the life stream. If someone lives in constant fear, they are swimming against the natural flow of the universal stream. And the fear is kind of like a stone that tries to hold back the stream. But that's what causes the rapids.
But it's like, they're wanting to experience happiness. They're wanting to experience joy. They're wanting to experience these things, but they can't let them in because they're so busy holding back what they fear.
And people can help you in many different ways. They can tell you what worked for them. You can read a fantastic book. Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, all these. There's many, many ways to learn about how to let go of fear. But you're the only one that has your hand on the switch. You're the only one. And you just have to find the will within you to do it. Jump off the high diving board. You got a fear? Just do it. That was the analogy I used all of my life. And it was true. I remember being a kid, the public swimming pool. All of my peers were jumping off the high diving board, screaming and hollering and laughing and playing glee, and it was just magnificent for them. I'm in the pool holding on for dear life, wanting to do it, and I could not figure out for the life of me, how can they be having so much fun doing something I am so scared to death about? Mm-hmm. And one day I said, this is the day. And I got up the diving board, and I couldn't turn back. There's a line of kids behind me. I had to do it. And I, 1, 2, 3, and I went to jump, and I caught myself, and I resisted. And I said, oh, heck. And I just jumped. And when I hit the water, I realized I didn't die. And it was very exhilarating. I was like, ooh, that was kind of cool. And now I'm running towards the diving board, pushing people out of the way.
That was kind of cool. I didn't die.
Yeah. And it taught me that I had a fear of my mortality. For some reason, I had a fear of dying at such a youthful age.
And so when you hit fear, do you acknowledge the fear? What do you do? For myself personally, if there's something going on and I recognize that I'm hitting fear, I will make a conscious acknowledgement of the fear. Hey, I'm afraid, this scares me. And then I just kind of take it and move it to the side. And it's like, okay, it's okay to be afraid, but it's not okay to stand still and let this stop you.
Yes. And what you just described was not reacting. It was acknowledging it. And two, you are acting. You are taking action. You say, okay, I'm aware that you're present. I'm aware that you exist. And I see you. And it actually begins to buffer and soften your fear, because the next time you're a little more used to it, and you might have a little more intimacy with it. And the next time, it's basically chipping away at the same tree that I would just cut down with a chainsaw. It's not consuming you. You're not afraid. You might have some fear, but you're not afraid. You're just not into it at that moment.
I don't know, but I think when you acknowledge the fear, it lets you kind of move it over there. Maybe I'm just weird, that I can just kind of disassociate the feeling from the rest of it.
I see what you're saying. Yes. In other words, you're acknowledging that this thing is there. It's not who you are. So just push it to the side. Is this what you're referring to?
Kind of. It's just kind of just the experience. It's like, doing this radio show, like me sitting on air doing a radio show. If you had to ask me that 8 years ago, I would, hey, do you want to do a radio show? I would have laughed in your face. I would have so laughed in your face. It's like, right. And then one day, Spirit said to me, you're going to love this one. It's time. And I said, time for what? And they said, to have a radio show. Oh, and by the way, because they always have me on a freaking schedule, you need to start the first weekend in January. And, you have to have a webpage and guests and blah, 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 blah. It was the middle of October. It scared the crap out of me. And I was like, Rita, you have to what if they don't like you? What if you're an idiot? What if you don't have anything to say? And I just said,
you're
okay.
very good at it. You're very good at it. Yeah.
But I just sat there and I said, okay, this is scaring the crap out, the bejesus. It was scaring the bejesus out of me, Keith. And I just said, okay, it's okay for me to be afraid, but they're telling me I got to do it. So I'm just going to do it. It's not even about being afraid anymore. It's just about, but I'm just going to do it. I don't know.
You do it well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And people even like me. That's the weirdest part of it all. Anyway. So one of the things that I've gotten into a number of conversations with people, and I'm just kind of looking at the clock, talking about spirit guides, is the concept that perhaps when we're interacting with guides, okay, so not your divine experience, because I think we're going to put that into a different category, okay? But when you're just interacting with your guides, the potential that there's this vocabulary thing going on, and perhaps we're just talking to some kind of extraterrestrials that are leading us along a path.
Yeah, I have the same sense as well. Long story short, I was watching the chat room a little earlier when you had your first guest. And I sort of focused on some of the dialogue about evidence. I think they were referring to aliens. Well, if you're ever going to trust anybody, you can trust me. It's there. It's real. It's me. It's you. I was fortunate, cursed, to have an experience, an open-eyed experience for 4+ years with a hybrid gray that worked through the body, which was a male, that worked through the body of a 5'1" woman. And listen, trust me when I tell you, I can see, not only with my eyes, I can see peripherally, I listen with my ears, I feel, I send out radar, and I can see. And this being that I befriended for 4 years did things not only in front of me, but did things to me that is truly not human.
We've never had this conversation before. This is juicy. We maybe should have gotten to this earlier. Okay, go ahead.
I can't begin to tell you the things that I've experienced. I mean, while I'm awake, grabbing me by my hand and pulling on my arm and yanking me out of my body and sitting me in the seat of his starship. This is pretty big. I mean, I'm surprised that you didn't know this about me, but 1998, I was introduced by a spiritual friend who said, "Keith, you want to meet an alien?" I said, "Sure. Follow me." And she's a funny girl, and she was being funny, but something was serious. So I began to follow her. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if a little green man was going to jump from behind the corner and yell boogity, 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 or I didn't know what to expect. And the person turns around, and it's a woman, 5'1". Her name was Star One. And the voice that came out of this person, there was no way this could be pulled off by this woman. She has a very squeaky, mousy type voice, and the demeanor changes, the body changes, the energy changes, and it's very, very bold, and it's very, very present. Has awareness in 6 dimensions simultaneously. He is known as a galactic police officer. He is head of security for our quadrant of this galaxy. He is so advanced and so plugged into the galactic system that he has his finger in every pie of everything that is going on in this quadrant. He literally roams the galaxy, policing it, like a police officer would a neighborhood. Gave me an implant after a night of playing music. He calls me one day. This is a very juicy story. Absolutely true. Calls me one day. We had a meditation group of 7 of us, and he was, quote, the leader. And he was actually being trained, prepped to become a true lord of light. His mother was a gray. His father was an Egyptian king. When I knew him, he was 4,720 years old. One day he calls me and says, "Keith, Hey, what's going on? I don't want to give his name. I would just call him Chuck.
So would like call you like on the phone or call you in your head?
He called me on the phone.
Okay,
he called me on the
checking.
phone. And I'll give you.
Did he have a cell phone?
Yeah, right. This is pre-cell phone days. No, this is 98. This is the beginning of that era. But he called me and said, Keith, everyone in our group has an implant. I make them myself. They're smaller than you can see. I have one left. Do you want it? I said, convince me. He says, well, if you're lost, we can find you. If you're in trouble, we can help you. And if you're sick, we can administer medicine. I said, all right. And he named a few more perks. I said, hey, what's the drawback? He says, your life will no longer be private. He says, no one, he says, you have anything you're ashamed of? I said, let me think. And then I said, no, I don't. And he said, no one will have access to your file but me. And I would only do that intuitively knowing that you would want me to go in there and see what's going on with you. I said, all right, deal. He says, the next time you and I speak, be it over the phone or in person, you will be implanted. I said, okay. The next night, that night I go play a gig. About 7:30 in the morning, I come to a state of full-blown consciousness by this excruciating pain in my right kidney. And of course, the first thing a person would do is find out the source of this pain so you can stop it. And I'm looking over my shoulder, and there's the equivalent of a 70-year-old woman, but alien, looking at me, pointing her finger at me, going, like silly boy kind of thing. And she cradles me, starts walking me towards some place. And the pain in my kidney is so excruciating, I begin to vomit. And she brings me over to him, and he's sitting in what's sort of like a lawn chair. And I vomited all over his feet. My phone rings in my actual bedroom, and I answer the phone. Hello? Hey, Keith, what's going on? I said, dude. I said, I just had a dream about you. He said, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. Man, don't tell me I just woke up from a dream with you. He goes, Keith, you were not dreaming. I said, are you sure about that? He says, the vomit all over my feet would say so. And his name does have a number in it. It's 8. And the 8 means he's number 8 on a board of 12. And I haven't spoken to him in quite a while. But this, so to answer your question, you asked me about angels. I don't know how I went on this marathon. About angels and extraterrestrials, they are very similar because nucleus had the ability to come to me. In fact, I was in a Chinese restaurant with my girlfriend and that meditation group getting some lunch after a Unity Church session. Excuse me. And Star One is there, and she's talking in her little high-pitched voice, and all of a sudden, the voice changes, the demeanor changes, the whole body posture changes. And I say, hey, guy, what's going on? He goes, Keith, you want to playmate? I said, yeah. He says, push your chair back. And we're sitting at a round table, big round table. He says, push your chair back. So I scooted my chair back. He goes, Keith, push your chair back. I'm about to put somebody in your lap. He raises up his hand. And Dr. Rita, I'm telling you everything I know as a human being, tells me someone was sitting in my lap. My girlfriend at the time says, Keith, is there someone sitting in your lap? And my eyes were stretched the size of silver dollars. I said, yes, there's someone sitting in my lap. She goes, oh my God, can I have one? He says, push your chair back. She scooted a chair back, and the look on her face, you would think she got the most magnificent Christmas present. It was the, oh my God, the hand over the mouth kind of thing. But I had these experiences. So to answer your question at length, yes, I think the whole system is infiltrated with every kind of consciousness we can imagine. And it's all around us, pro and con.
So do you think that there are negative or low-level aliens that, because I do a lot of work with attached entities, and it just, it just gets kind of weird. Where do you draw the line between is a spirit guide, or are we just getting into a, pissing match vocabulary-wise? Because obviously they are not human, which would make them alien,
right?
You know,
right.
and so what do you do with that? Or you just leave it alone and don't do anything? No.
You mean if they're in your space?
No, I'm just curious what your understanding of that is. I mean, So it sounds like you acknowledge that there are extraterrestrials.
Yes.
And so do you feel like the extraterrestrials and the spirit guides could be one and the same?
I think your description of it was perfect. I think it was right on. You know, we call people who live across the border aliens. And that's just an invisible line, and we're on the same globe. I mean, we're next door neighbors. It's an invisible line. I mean, they're not aliens, for God's sakes. They're beings in the universe, and it's filled up with them infinitely. And yeah, we can call them aliens. They call them demons, which has the heavy connotation. But there are good and bad people on every plane of existence, except when you get into the higher stratospheres. And, of course, that energy doesn't exist. But when there's a crossfade of energy, you know, it just comes and goes. And, you know, there you can call them demons. You know, my Catholic background would say demons, but I don't believe in a devil per se. But, yes, they would have demonic qualities. Look, I can point you out a couple of people here in Memphis, Tennessee who share some of those qualities, and on both sides of the fence. And I don't mean this out of judgment, but out of fact. It's polarities that people play with. And, you know, you invest yourself in ideas, you begin to manifest those ideas. And, you know, it all has its consequence, pro and con. You know, back some years ago, Dr. Rita, they would be aliens that if they picked you up, you ain't coming back. You were food.
Tastes like chicken.
That's all. Yeah, right. Sorry. And that's all pretty much gone now because the vibration of Earth is too high or getting higher, and they cannot see in this bandwidth. It's the same reason why you cannot see infrared or ultraviolet, or we cannot hear what dogs hear. It's just no longer in their visible spectrum.
Interesting. So we're going to take one last question from the chat room, and this is from Bill in New York, and he wanted to know if you ever received any information about what their agenda is here and how far the policing goes.
Fantastic question. It's a little general. Why they are here, I guess it would depend on what but if you're asking the question in the general sense, the broader sense, the good ones, the good guys. Well, let's give an answer of each. The good guys are here because we are their investment. We are their children. We are part of a, like a galactic cosmic soup. We have RNA, DNA from all these different breeds, probably 6 or 7, and we're supposed to be mingling among ourselves, and eventually it's going to come to the place where these 6 different races, that us and the other 5 or the other 6, going to create a new race, which is in turn going to create a new expression of the divine. They're here to help us further that order from higher up, from the boss, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And the other ones, the bad ones, they're here for selfish agendas. But I do believe there are some that are here just out of curiosity. They're curious to see what's happening. Why is all the focus on Earth? Earth is actually becoming a star. People say, well, I didn't know it can do that. Well, we are already a star. I mean, we're in the limelight and everybody's watching. They want to see what's about to happen in this great divine experience that has never happened in the history of the universe, ever. That God consciousness can walk on a physical plane. Jesus, Sai Baba, Buddha, Krishna, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, these people who represent the higher, finer qualities, the subtle, fragile, most powerful qualities of the universe are beating their feet on this earth. And that's what they're here to show us. That, we just dig in, tap in, get the fear out, get your life aligned, do what you love, and live heaven on earth.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to say goodbye because our time is up. Keith, always wonderful having you on, and this was just fun and informative and good. It's all good.
It's lovely. I really appreciate the interview, and I just have the grandest time speaking with you on this very fine, informative platform of yours that was handed to you, and you were scared to death. And you're doing absolutely fantastic with it.
Thank you. And now we're like closer. And so I'm hoping that, once things settle down here a little bit, we can come to your town and come see you play. So that's exciting.
I'd like that. You would be my very, very special guest. And maybe you can walk through another fear or express yourself over a microphone in a different way and sing a song with me.
I'll stage dance. How's that?
Yeah.
I don't know about the singing part. Well, well, it's not like I haven't sung on the radio. It would just have to be the right time and the right song. It would be fun. With you, it would be fun, and I would just warn people to plug their ears because you just don't ever know what kind of key it comes out in. But it always comes out with enthusiasm and vigor. Bad as it may be. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for coming on, and you and I will chat
Dr. Rita Louise
down the road, I'm sure.
Rita Louise each week at this time.
Again, thank you, and thanks for everyone listening in the chat room. I wish I had time to talk to you, but I'm going to stick around for a little bit and answer some questions. And again, Dr. Rita, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Namaste.
That's Keith Anthony Blanchard. His webpage is keithanthonyblanchard.com. His book is The Divine Principle. Next week, we have a very special guest. In the first hour, we have Andrew Collins coming on talking about the seeds of Göbekli Tepe revealed. The secrets of Göbekli Tepe revealed. And in the second hour, Cynthia Sue Larson talking about quantum jumps. Quantum effects do occur. And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio.